Hi, so this is going to be a review of this book, K through 12 and the Millennials, that is by William Strauss and Howe, a couple of authors who've done a bunch of research on the effects of generations in culture and in institutions, colleges, elementary schools. And this book is focused, it just came out in late 2008, and it's focused specifically on K through 12 schools. But I think it's important to note that it doesn't just focus on millennials. So I'm going to give you a little preview of a couple things that I found really interesting in the book, as well as a review of the overall content. So the first thing is a couple questions for you. Since 1995, we want to take a look at these different indicators here and give a guess as to whether these indicators, such as violent crime, ages 14 to 19, have gone up, stayed the same, or gone down since 1995, right? So for violent crime, ages 14 to 19, has it gone up, stayed the same, or gone down? Same for fatal shootings in schools. And remember, Columbine happened in 1999, so since 1995, has this gone up, stayed the same, or gone down? The average combined SAT scores for kids, has that gone up or down? Percentage of high school students that drink, up, same, or down? And how about average time watching television, ages 12 to 17? And then finally, the percent of teens who say they listen to their parents' music, has that gone up, stayed the same, or down? What's your guess for each of these? Well, if you don't work with kids on a daily basis, I think it's likely that you would say this has gone up, but in fact it's gone down a fair bit in schools. The violent crime has gone down from ages 14 to 19 quite a bit since 1995. Same with violent shootings in school, and this is even including the numbers for Columbine. It's still gone down. The average combined SAT has gone up, and an interesting fact here is that it's gone up even though the number of students taking the SAT has increased as well, which means that it's more likely that the SAT scores would go down as you had more people taking the test. The percentage of high school students that drink, this has gone down since 1995. The average time watching TV, ages 12 to 17, that's gone down as well, although there's other factors that have gone up, such as computer time, and obesity has increased. And then the percentage of teens who say they listen to their parents' music, this has actually increased as well. So this impression that many people have of the millennial generation as being, kind of out of control youth is really is not the case. That was true for Generation X, but for the millennials born 1982 to probably around 2005 or so, that's not the case. And this is one of the first things that really caught my eye in the book, and you can find this same chart with more details on it in the book, and I really suggest it for that purpose. The next thing we'll talk about is another factor that I found really interesting, another tidbit from the book, which was about the relationship between parents and millennial kids. So let's talk for just a minute about the generation we're speaking of here. We're talking about the millennial generation, which was born 1982 to 2005. And these are the kids. They started graduating from high school in year 2000, and they're coming through the schools right now, probably all the way down to first graders, maybe even a little bit younger, depending on where the break point is, which might be at 2001. But so the schools are full of them right now. And this millennial generation really started when you saw these baby on board stickers appearing in the backs of windows. And as the authors point out, this generation has been fairly protected. They're wanted children. They're unlike Generation X, the generation I was a part of. They're a generation that is really cherished and raised to do great things and achieve great things. And many of the parents of the ones who were sticking these baby on board stickers in the backs of their Volvos were the parents of the millennial generation, were the boomer generation, born 1943 to 1960. And the boomer generation is the one that through young adulthood carried out all the protests in the 60s and tends to have strong ideologies and opinions about the way the world should be. And they're the primary parents of the earlier millennial generation, such as the kids that are coming out of college, out of high school now. Their majority of them are the boomer parents, and sometimes these are described as helicopter parents. So they'll often be on the scene, right there, watching over what their kids are doing, very concerned that nobody gets hurt and that everybody has a fair chance, and really watching out for their kids at every turn, something that they didn't have so much in their youth, and same for the Generation X. They weren't really watched over in that same way, and that hovering is one of those things that I think a lot of teachers have had to cope with and gotten used to, that that they're going to kind of be in their business a fair bit. So this is the characteristic of the boomer generation, and that's described in the book as well, and I think that's an important point, is it's not just about the kids, not just about these millennial kids, it's also about the parents, and which is such a challenge for so many of the teachers. The next generation to come along that is also parents of the millennial generation, and this is true for me and my kids. I was born in 1966, so Generation X is 1961 to 1981 for the birth years. And my kids were born in 1996 and 2000, so they're millennial as well. But we're part of the later part of the millennial parents. And so now it's getting to the point where a majority of the parents for a lot of these classes, starting right in 2009, it's maybe 6th, 7th grade, that tipping point is happening, and you're shifting over from the boomers to the Generation Xers as the parents. And these Generation X parents, as they point out in the book, are a little different than the helicopter parents that the boomers are. They instead are more like stealth fighter parents, is how they describe them, as they don't ask a whole lot of questions or worry about stuff too much, but if there's a problem for their child, they fly in, drop a bomb, and fly back out. And that may be pulling their kid out of the school without any comment. It may be filing a lawsuit against a school. It may be becoming very combative with the teacher, and it's very focused on the teacher. There's a big difference between the characteristics of these parents, and it's something that teachers are having to deal with, less so in the children, but much more so with the parents. So that's another highlight, I think, of the book. It describes the differences between the boomer and Gen X as parents and how to deal with them, and it gives very specific strategies for how to approach teaching these kids who are of a very different character than their parents, and also dealing with the parents who have very high expectations for their millennial kids. The book is a easy read and very enjoyable, and I highly recommend it. You can, at this point, I believe, as far as I can tell, you can only get it from their website, from the author's website, lifecourse.com. I don't know if it'll go on sale at Amazon at some point as well, but I'll put a link in the part of the review here as well. You can get it at their website, lifecourse.com. I highly recommend it if you're an educator and you're working with kids of these ages and parents of these ages. It will give you a lot of insights that will save you a lot of heartache.